Hello again, freedom lovers. Here we are for part two of the Saturday celebrations of 6 months of cafe lockdown, 2.5 years of North Queensland Freedom Network. So it all just seems appropriate that we had two shows today. Darren sends his apologies, he was unable to make it, but it's okay. We still have talent here. We still have Darrell. It's all good. He's here. He's ready to come to the party. Let's bring him in. How are you, Darrell?
Good, Betty. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. Good, mate. Good to have you here, man.
Good to be here.
So, I understand you guys are on the road, ready to start doing some tours and bringing the good word to the people.
Yeah, mate. We've done a stint in Sydney, and we're about to do the Melbourne one next weekend. So yeah, we're on the road, and we've got a few changes that we've made.
Mm-hmm.
But those changes are pretty significant.
Yep.
So yeah, we're ready to rock and roll, mate.
So, when you say you made some changes that are pretty significant, can you give us a bit of a hint as to what the people might be able to sort of witness, learn at these amazing new events?
Well, we're really geared towards helping people understand and navigate the way that government operate, and we do that through letting people know where the Constitution can be found, all the laws attaching to it, what the government can or cannot do, and in that process of teaching people that, we've uncovered a lot of other methods to make them accountable, and those methods we've been refining over the years. And since Darren's come on board, we've really moved along quite rapidly, and especially with his research. And of course, this has uncovered even more information that people really need to get their heads around. We're there to present these different methods and navigation tools and give people a toolbox for which they can, I guess, they can confidently step up to their members of parliament and give them a hard time. So, we've really moved along with respect to FOIs. Darren's presentation on FOIs is growing, and also Halsbury's Laws of England. We've uncovered probably one of the most powerful books of authority with respect to law as it was defined in England. And of course, we've inherited all those laws here in Australia, and this is what the system's been trying to take us away from more than anything. It's trying to steer us away from this English background in law towards this corporate nightmare that seems to be dictated from foreign powers. So we're uncovering all of that, and we're here in these seminars to point people in that direction of information. It can be overwhelming, the information that we do present at these seminars, but this is why we have these books that people get with information packs in the form of CDs or USBs, and they can comfortably then, with this toolbox of knowledge, apply their particular situation or apply how they're going to communicate with government at different levels, be it directly to members of parliament, or if you're in the court system, how to navigate the courts, and better understanding more than anything of what government is, because really it's a beast that we've been uneducated about for too long, and it's time for the people to wake up.
Definitely. We've definitely treated like mushrooms, man. We are living in the dark and fed on bullshit at the best of times.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think the work you're doing is amazing. Like, I've got the home study course here myself, which I found very informative. How different would you say the current presentation is to that home study course?
Oh, well, we've expanded on, like I said, the FFOIs. We've expanded on the Constitution itself and how it's being applied, especially with respect to what the High Court's done just in the last 12 months and
Okay.
how that impacts on the states. So, we really go in depth into that High Court case and help people better understand what the High Court were actually saying. And then we're able to bring it back to what the Constitution's been telling us for 100 years and better refine that so that when people communicate to their government, utilizing this high court case and the findings within it, they're better able to pretty much corner government into whether or not most of the taxes that they're imposing are actually constitutionally correct. So it gives you the ability with our latest presentations to just really better refine how we approach government. And that's probably one of the most important things. Over the past 10 years, we've been doing these seminars. We've gone off on a couple of different tangents with respect to, how the law books refer to individuals, how the tax office refer to us. But in this particular case, we've really honed in. I mean, it is targeting probably the most embarrassing spots of what government's actually up to, especially the states. More than anything, the states are really running out of control. We really like to bring people back to this understanding that the pre-colonial days, prior federation, are important to understand and how that carries over to today in each of the states. And it is so important that it can actually free people from obligations that the states be imposing. We touch on the land title stuff, which is really important. And it's something that Darren and I are really diving deep into. And we will, the land title stuff especially is something where it's going to require a separate seminar, which will be forthcoming.
Okay.
But we give you an introduction to that at the Know Your Rights seminar, and give you some homework to do regarding your own property ownership, and which will help you then by the time our specific seminar comes up. It'll help you then better understand what it is that you're going to be confronting when we do have a focused seminar. It is important, and it's probably the most important seminar that we will be conducting, the future one, with respect to the whole way government operates throughout this country. It is that important. We can pull the rug completely out of government just through what we're doing with land titles. So the Know Your Rights seminar is a good introduction because like I said earlier, mate, it's overwhelming with information. Most people have come away just going, wow, head overload. I'm luckily I've got this book to work back to. And this is what we try and focus as well with respect to the radio show. We try and sort of bring people back to what those books and those seminar books say. Don't just put it aside, utilize it, because we've deliberately structured those seminar books as a reference for people. So when they go away, it should be there beside them when they are deciding to step up to deal with their particular case relating to how government's dealing with them or their property.
So we had, obviously, for the audience who may not be familiar, we did have Len Harris here, a few weeks ago. Does your property title stuff sort of work in with Len's? Is this future presentation perhaps going to have Len involved? What are we looking at here?
Um, uh, Len Harris, yeah, I mean, he's got a fantastic knowledge of how titles, especially, have been dealt with in the state of Queensland.
Mm.
He really highlights the misbehaviour that the Queensland got up to. We're not incorporating him at this moment in our seminars because our seminars will be really geared towards pre-Torrens title. And this is what we try and introduce when we talk to the audience when it comes to the Know Your Right seminar. We're sort of structuring a better understanding of what that title actually means. So Len's really been focusing on what Queensland have been up to and where the system lays at the moment. What we're doing is giving you a bit more history as to what was happening pre-Torrens title and pre the single registries from existing in each state of Australia, and where that all stemmed back from. So, and the protections that have been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. So, yeah, it's an ongoing work in progress. But we've been working in with other people who have got huge history in just land titles and property here in Australia, and they've been doing an enormous amount of work in this area for many, many years. So we've cottoned on to them, and they want to remain as anonymous as possible. So we're sort of the public face of their research. And what we've also been working on I've been working on titles personally for about 5 or 6 years. So we've sort of pulled all of our information, and we're about to bring that forward through these seminars because we have been looking for a way to properly protect our land titles. And I mean, this affects everyone. It doesn't matter whether you rent property or whether you own property. This affects everyone. And especially nowadays, states in particular are imposing, taxation at an increasing incremental amount over and above properties, and that affects everybody. So not only that, but it also highlights on the banking industry and how the banking industry and the government have been sort of in cohorts ever since Torrens title to establish a form of monopoly and fraud over those titles. So, we need to, because this has been going on for so long, I mean, we could even show you stuff that some of the framers of our Constitution back at pre-Federation, what the devil within the system of government back then were wanting to control regarding private land. So, there's no innocence here. We are dealing with a den of thieves in government, and that's been there pre-Federation. So it's time for the people to take it's an education process first, and once you've got that education in your head, you know where it's at, you know what government's been up to, then we take those next cautious steps. And the more of us that do it, of course, the better. So, and we do it with diplomacy as the heading. We have to move forward very carefully and try and bring those, even who are within the system, who have no idea, where they do have power, They're near terrific. Stand with the people, don't stand with the devils, and we'll get through this without any problems, or anyone trying to do stupid things. And of course, this is what the government's particularly they seem to specialise in recently, and that is being that idiot brigade that really doesn't make any sense when it comes to whatever it's been doing, regardless of whether it's been the imposition of tax or or whether they want to set up laws in this futuristic realm where they say, what's going to happen to us, and if we don't stop doing what we're doing, then it could mean this or this. It's just insane. So we just have to step back and say, guys, sit down and realize who's the boss here, because they're not our bosses.
So, yeah, definitely. So there was a term there you used, and it was a few minutes ago now, and I knew I should have written it down, regarding the property title. What was it again?
Torrens title.
Yes, Torrens title. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is, please?
Yeah, Torrens title is what they set up around 1862 in order to establish a single registry office for private land title owners to register their title with. So each state established that, and this was in an inheritance as from the Crown from England. So those old land title tenures were sort of converted over to operate out of a single government registry. And when it comes to the title itself, it's not only the title, in fact, the most important document within this, what's called a chain of titles, was the title deed. And that's the sort of key. And this is what the Torrens title system was there to maintain, for the security of the title, because their argument at the time was, well, some people, that when it come to conveying their land from them to either an inheritance or to a purchaser, the documents were damaged, or they'd been lost. Some of the documents have been lost. So the argument that the government was using at the time was, well, we need to set up a single registry so that there's no problems with that sort of power. So
have you got a bell there or something, mate?
I'm just receiving a lot of messages.
Oh, right. Okay. Cool. I keep hearing this bell going off. I'm like, is there something going on in my head? I mean, I did have a pretty trippy conversation just before online with Maurice, about, the structure of the universe and whatnot. And, we were getting right into some pretty wild theories, and the basis of it was, simulation theory, and all of a sudden I'm hearing this fucking bell going off. I'm like, this is just still in my head. No, you're all right. It's all good, mate. All good there. Yeah. So
the Torrens title system has been around since 1862. It was sort of started in South Australia and sort of spread around the rest of the states. And that's where we've been at. So South Australia is sort of slightly different, and Western Australia is different. Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, they're slightly different again. So they've all taken their sort of interpretation of the Torrens system. And the Torrens system also allowed, especially the right, which I'm struggling to understand really, for banks to come in and essentially, if the property is being purchased with a bank loan or a mortgage, then it's with a bank loan or a mortgage, then they seem to have this ability to take away a copy of that that title and do whatever they like with it. And this is where there seems to be a problem, understanding where banks seem to have this exclusive right to taking a copy of that title. And yet, if I had as a private individual, if there was a debt owed to me from a property owner, and I went into the registry office and said, hang on, I want to put a caveat against this property, no, I don't get a copy of the title.
Yeah.
Why have banks got this exclusive right to the title? And that title, when you look at it under the letter of the law, and if we go to the Banking Act in 1959, Commonwealth.
So 59. I thought, wasn't there a Banking Act in 1913 as well?
Oh, yeah, they go right back to 1908, 1911, 1913. It was called the Commonwealth Bank Act back then. But if I look at the 1959 one, which is considered the current version, that title...
So is that, sorry to cut you off, is that has it sort of that one act carried on and evolved over time? Yeah.
And this is one of the things we touch on at the seminars. We sort of show people that legislation should carry over. And this is the key to understanding the powers of the states and what they were prior, states being colonies, and what the Constitution gave them the power to do, and what they're doing today is totally separate. So, yeah, it's this carryover sort of business. But with respect to the Banking Act, that title deed is considered currency. Right. So it has the same...
in the form of a bond sort of thing?
Well, it's deemed currency.
Okay.
So that title should be considered it's something you can trade. Because we trade currency for energy, for goods, for goods and services. So, that title, and this is what's wrong about the banks taking a version. They say it's for security. Well, no, the security was established with this so-called Torrens Title Office, being a government Crown-controlled office for the security of the titles. So why do we need that extra form of security through the bank? Oh, yeah, but we need it just in case what? What are we going to do? We've got...
There's nothing written in there to justify it?
No, there's nothing. It's like, where did this right come from for the banks to take something that's tradable, and then what do they do with it? Now we've learned since that, yes, there is fraud going on here. They trade it. Yes, they do take advantage of the fact that it's a form of currency, and they do put it onto the New York Stock Exchange under derivatives. Yes, they do benefit from it. Well, hang on. To me, that's fraud. That's my understanding of what the law says. That's a form of fraud, because I'm not receiving the benefit. They are. They're receiving a benefit from that title. Sorry, that's not how the system should be operating. And I think from what we've learned from the US, the government is holding their hand through this whole process and benefiting as well. So, we're exposed to one massive fraud with respect to banks and government and land titles. So, yes, this is important. Yes, this should be on the front on the front page of our news. And yes, we should be calling government and banks out on what exactly is happening with that title the moment they get their grubby mitts onto it. I want a full history.
Jan's asking if you're referring to people who have mortgages, and I believe that's when the banks are able to sort of move in, unless you, I mean, for instance, if you lob up with a full wad of cash, right, buying it outright, no loan necessary, do we have the same kind of problem? I guess
That's
I'm
it.
thinking, yeah,
You've hit the nail on the head. That's what a mortgage is.
yeah,
And they're saying it's for the purposes of securing the property. Well, okay, fine. Please explain why you need a copy of that title that's tradable. Isn't it good enough that it's registered on the back of the title at the single registry office? Isn't that good enough? But no, they want a copy. So, well, why? Why? Please, I want a full explanation and I want a full breakdown of everything that's occurred with respect to that title from the moments they get their grubby mitts onto it. I want to know. I want to see a paper trail. I want to follow the money to what's actually going on with that title.
Now, banks are an independent entity, so we aren't able to sort of go, hey, FOI, give us the information, are you? What we need is perhaps more of an audit.
Well, there's a good question. What constitutionally, the banks are bound under our legislation created by our legislator as state banks. And that's under the head of power for that's in section 51 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
So when they did this big flip, eliminating all the state banks and creating the big four, under what was called the Reserve Bank of Australia, well, is that Reserve Bank of Australia part of the Commonwealth of Australia? You would expect so, as there is a head of power within the Constitution to maintain those banks and maintain proper legal tender according to what the Constitution dictates. Well, the Reserve Bank is a private bank and it's tied directly to the Federal Reserve in New York. So then hang on, if that's the case, who is the creditor? Who is the creditor? Is Westpac a creditor? Is National Bank a creditor? Are they able to show that the monies they've lent have actually come out of that bank? Can they show that? Are they the creditor, or is there someone behind that creditor or behind that bank who is the creditor? So
would that be our Reserve Bank of Australia, or are we looking for someone behind them again?
Again, yeah. And we find these 12 banks in America who are the Federal Reserve, like the Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Goldman Sachs. These are the entities who are actually behind all of this. Now, we found they are actually the creditors, not the banks here. So our laws provide the credit must come from whoever is making that claim. Okay, well, I've gone up to take a mortgage out with ANZ or whatever, and my contract is with them. So is there someone behind them? Well, turns out there is. And this is what we need to find out. We need people to ask these questions with respect, especially through their mortgage documents. But in order to better understand what's actually where the law stands with respect to this, we need people to understand what their title means. We don't know at the moment. We really don't. And it's been massive learning curve for myself and others, our other researchers, when we've been diving down this rabbit hole. And too many people have sort of heard about this land title stuff over the last 12 months and just gone, oh, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll recreate it. No. First, understand what it is you're dealing with.
Exactly.
Let's look at the history of this document. And this chain of documents, you need to understand that before you start asking questions of the system. And this is what we touch on in the Know Your Right seminar. We bring people into that space, and they've got the hard copy there. I mean, a lot of the time, when you're sitting in the audience and you're listening to a whole bunch of information thrown at you, most people only take away about 10%. Others, of course, but they've got that book there to work back on. We encourage them to take notes all the way through, and we have provision in the books for people to take notes, and they can ask questions, and this is how we start this networking system, so that people then, they work through many groups that we've already managed to create throughout Australia. And, we keep feeding those groups every week through our radio show, and also forums like yours, Batty. This sort of network that we need in order to give people confidence that this law that they're being shown, and this methods they've been shown, and the people that come onto your show and the like, have substance that people can get their heads around, and then move forward and turn their back on this propaganda rubbish that we're being fed through these televisions and our mainstream media system.
Definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head there with we need to understand what's going on. So on my previous show just a couple hours ago, as we were, dissecting the matrix, so to speak, one of the points I was trying to get through as to why I'm coming at it one from a very spiritual sort of construct earlier, and now we're coming at it from a very legal construct today, or at this point in today, is so that people can start to understand what the hell is going on in this world. We've all had the blinders on. We're living in the dark, fed on bullshit. It's time to start eating some good food, some real knowledge, get out into the light a little bit, out of this dark space that they've kept us in, and understand what's going on. And from, like, say, the mechanical point of view, you can't fix the car until you know how the car works. We've got to reverse engineer this process. So I'm really glad that you're able to come on and help shed some light on this particular, legal construct, because, as somebody who has a mortgage, I certainly want to know what the hell is going on. And I certainly find it very highly dubious that, particularly here in Queensland, we have this piece of legislation that says it's okay, you don't need a title deed. In fact, we're going to classify it a historical document. Even if you've got one, it's now worthless. Just trust us that we've set up a digital title registry with no information for you to follow or check up on. Just trust us. And as Len Harris put it, we have one line in one piece of legislation that is an assurance that can easily be repealed at any time.
That's right. And too much power in government. Government haven't got these sort of powers, especially when it comes to that title. And this is what, the title, property ownership has been alienated from the Crown quite deliberately, and the King cannot encroach upon that property unless there's consent from the proprietor of that property. So it was quite deliberately set up this way right back in 1290. So this is what we sort of expand upon when we get to that when we get to the seminar. So, mate, it's a rabbit hole, but it's one we all need to walk down, because it all affects us personally at all levels. And I mean, I know probably one of the biggest forms of complaint about government throughout Australia, and this led up to the 1988 referendum, which was relating to local government and the performance of local government. And it's no different today. In fact, if anything, if that question that was put to us in 1988 was repeated today, it probably would have increased. The local government is one of those entities that is well and truly out of control. But I know there are some good people in Queensland at the moment who are actively now working to bring about prosecutions against the 77 different shires throughout Queensland. And that's going to be quite powerful when you get, this is the people stepping up and saying, we've had a gutful of the rubbish that you've been feeding us, and your obvious leanings towards foreign powers to
which
how
is
you
again violation of the Constitution.
totally, the states have no power whatsoever to deal with any foreign entity. And that was written into the Australia Act, 1986. So, they're way out of their paddock at the moment. And this is local governments. They really have to be pulled up big time and put back into their place. In fact, realistically, what place is that? I think they've dirtied their box so badly that I think we're just going to have to reinvent them altogether if we need to at all.
It does seem to be the case. I mean, at the end of the day, local government is supposed to be more of a, an administrative body, as I understand it. The idea that they were a government in any way, shape, or form was clearly, said against in that referendum. So how they can go, oh well, we'll ignore the will of the people and create a local government act is still beyond me. Like, it's just a blatant disregard for the will of the people. You can't say this is a democracy. And as I was pointing out in a previous podcast, you keep hearing these politicians, we must protect our democracy. Well, they're clearly not talking about you and me, and in that hour. It's more, them and their handful of friends have this little group that they're calling democracy, which is, a bastardization of said word. Then probably, their definition doesn't exist in any dictionary that I'm aware of. But I kind of look at their version of democracy as an elective dictatorship, more to the point, So, I mean, obviously coming to the, these presentations that you guys are putting on is one of the big things that people can do. What dates have we got available? So is it next Friday or through Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Melbourne, correct?
Yeah. So 31st through to the 2nd inclusive. Friday night's free, so people just lob up, or you can register prior to purchase the $20 book. Or you can just come along with a notepad, and then.
But there are limited spaces, so a booking's probably a good idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea to let Mike and Karen know what's going on. When you're going to lob up, they have you then down on a list, and then you come in, sit down, and just learn and ask questions. And then Saturday and Sunday we go down the rabbit hole. So that's our first Melbourne one for this year. Like I said, we've been in Sydney, and then I think we do Gold Coast then and Townsville, but the schedule's up on the website anyway for people to have a look at and see if they're going to come along when they can, and if that's the one in their area.
And there is a link to that website in the description, people, to Know Your Rights group.com, I believe it is. And also a link to Darren's Constitution Watch. He's not here, but he still gets a plug anyway. He's a good dude. We'll look after him.
We'll look after
him. And what are the other dates you've got available coming up?
Well, that's for the Know Your Rights seminar. We've got all those dates on the website, which goes through till, I think, August, because we're doing Gold Coast, Townsville, then we're doing Perth, and then I think we're back to Gold Coast. So we got a boot camp back in Gold Coast, and I think that's the last event for the year. But yeah, check out all those dates. Now, the boot camps are much deeper down that rabbit hole, and you go, we find there are levels that people can handle of information, and this is why we've then created the boot camp with respect to, okay, for those who are really, they've got it at the seminar level that we conduct every year, but now you want to go really deep. with respect to your particular situation, then we go down that rabbit hole in the boot camp. And we've done one so far last year, and we had a really positive reaction from that. It's sort of that next step. So we don't, it's all done in-house wherever we hold it. And so, the meals are provided there, the accommodation, so everything. So you don't really need to move out of the building for the whole weekend. And yeah, you come away with, you become a bit of a weapon, actually.
Nice.
And people have, utilised that information quite thoroughly. And, we're calling the system out, wherever and we've got people coming in from interstate to those boot camps. So, they do come away with a lot more information, but you've really got to dedicate some time then to whatever you're doing in your particular state. So, and we're conducting at the moment, we're conducting a mandate in
a mandate.
Yeah, in West Australia. So there's an area sort of from the South Australian border, the southern part of West Australia. There's an area there where the West Australian government they're calling for a marine park. And that marine park is going to prevent the many districts and towns that live on that coastline, prevent them from doing any commercial fishing.
Really?
Yeah.
What about private fishing? Is that going out the window too? Or?
Well, that it's going to be regulated. And of course, we're finding now in all of our national parks, they're restricting our movements. So that will also affect private fishing. They're saying this is all for the benefit of the area.
Yeah, we're saving the world again.
Saving the world again, yeah, hugging those trees, good and tight. And yet, the commercial fishing along this part of Western Australia has been regulated quite effectively through the Department of Fisheries for decades without any problems. All the people that operate in that area have been doing so with knowledge of keeping whatever they do clean, waste, all this stuff, and what they catch. The fisheries, they've been working in with the Department of Fisheries all that time, and yet it seems now that, and this is influence, and they actually admitted this on the website that the West Australian government put across, that they are under the influence of foreign powers to bring about this marine park. And they're going to empower an Indigenous group with the funding to police that marine park. So it's like they're inventing this whole new entity other than the already established departments who oversee these areas. So it's more money going out the door, which is just being wasted, and there's no accountability, and it's just a ridiculous scheme, but it's affecting people's livelihoods. So the group there got onto us through the radio show and said, can you help us out with some form of legal standing against what the government's proposing? So yeah, no worries, and I drafted a mandate, and now and I encourage them to put a committee together to oversee the distribution of the mandate, bring the local member for the state parliament into that into the fray, let them know what's going on. The community's very active now. They've even been reported in the local paper. They're spreading that mandate now up and down that coastline in all the areas right up to the South Australian border. And they're getting, I had to convince them that the mandate had validity, and I sort of said, well, we only have to look back a couple of years to the effect of a mandate that had Australia-wide, in fact, worldwide, with respect to taking part in that clinical trial. So yes, mandates work. It doesn't have. It's not government that exercise mandates. It's the people's power.
It's pretty funny. I think mandates are gender biased. That's hilarious.
But I've done this twice before, and back in here in Victoria, and back in about 2006, I think it was, I conducted a mandate where the Victorian government was going to impose a toxic waste dump in the sheep belt of Victoria, which was a place called Violet Town and Bataginny, just near Benalla. And they were going to, and of course, all the farmers in the area, they were under threat because wherever the rail line went through that particular district, the government was stepping in under the Land Acquisition Act, and they were purchasing these properties, and then they were going to convert them into this toxic waste dump. And the people in the area were just up saying, no way. So I stepped in and said, well, this is a possibility. I'll draft a mandate, and if you people get behind it, it's your expression of will, every single one of you, as an instruction, a direction to government that this is not what you want. Look elsewhere. Thank you very much. Thanks for the offer, but no thanks. And I drafted the mandate and handed it up to the local state member on the Tuesday, and on the Friday on the mainstream media, the Premier at the time, who was Steve Bracks, announced, we're not putting the toxic waste dump anymore in that town or that area. They found some obscure spotted frog, and it was habitat.
They found a back door, eh? We don't want to admit what it was.
So then about 18 months later, I got a call from the local government in Mildura. And that's where the Victorian government were next eyeballing where the railway line headed to Mildura. There was a place called Towinji, and they were looking to acquire all the properties around that area and set up the toxic waste dump. And they said, listen, we heard about what you did in Benalla. Any chance of coming up and having a bit of a spiel about it? So I went up there with a friend of mine, and we convinced the local government there, the spokespersons from the local government, that this has teeth. And they then introduced us to, they said, well, I said, I need a committee. I need a dedicated group of people in order to spread this mandate out. And they said, yeah, no worries. So they introduced me to this chap by the name of Peter Crisp, and he was the head of the Fruit Bowl Alliance for that area. And I convinced him and his committee, and they said, yeah, okay, we'll promote this. And they did. And the local paper actually devoted one whole page to the mandate. And that shire actually was it's the biggest shire in Victoria. It goes from Mildura all the way down to Warrnambool. And they got 18,000 of these mandates pouring in. This is in the first week. And at that time, there was a federal election, and Peter Crisp was standing as the member. He saw the support that he was getting through the mandate, and he got voted into Parliament. And they all of a sudden, this spotted brown frog appeared again. He said, oh, listen, this same creature we found in Benalla, it's appeared in Towinji. And we just can't encroach upon this poor creature's habitat.
So it's astounding, because they're bulldozing the fuck out of the coastline up here to put fucking wind farms up. And there's a whole bunch of these, frogs you've never heard of they've found, but that doesn't seem to matter.
Yeah. But back then, it was the thing to do to sort of, step away from the embarrassment of having the people instruct them or direct them to forget about that plan and look elsewhere.
Well, that's the most important thing, is making sure the people aren't aware of their own power, because if this shit catches on, Struth, our democracy's in danger.
Oh, their democracy, you
Yeah,
mean?
exactly. I was definitely stepping into the acting role there.
I noticed, mate. I
Mm,
noticed.
Struth.
No, but yeah,
Man, where
people's
does it
power
end?
is there. It is, mate. It really is.
Definitely. So, to give some props to, what you guys are doing, I just found the page here where, if you go to the Know Your Rights page, you can go to the seminars tab and scroll down, and here's the list of the dates. So Melbourne
Yep.
31st through to the 2nd of June, Gold Coast 12th through to the 14th of July, Townsville. Come on, my fellow Townsvillians, come out and support the guys. I want to see this show. I want to be a part of this. I will be there, provided it happens. And for it to happen, we need the right amount of people to get on board. So, those of you guys up in Cairns and, surrounding regions, Charters Towers, Air, what am I thinking? Mackay, that's all. It's all drivable distance. Trust me, I drive to Cairns and back regularly. I'll be doing it 4 times next week. It's possible to do it as a drive. You don't have to fork out for plane tickets. Come and check it out. Like, seriously, it's definitely worth it. Definitely worth it. I mean, just the home study course alone was, so amazing. I'm looking forward just to seeing, one of these events. Perth 13th through to the 15th of September, and of course there's that Gold Coast boot camp. So yeah, jump on board, guys. Have a look at this stuff. We need some more people in Townsville in particular. Because yeah, I'd hate to think that I can't have this happen right here in a wonderful hometown because not enough of you guys were interested. And there's clearly enough people interested here in the chat. And I know that by the end of tomorrow or whatnot, there'll be several thousand views across multiple platforms. Surely there's a few people that can muster up a few bucks and come and do this. And like you said, the Friday is free. So I mean, you go check out the Friday and go, hey, I like this. Let's sign up for a Saturday and Sunday. I believe that's an option yet.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we try and take as many spare books for the Saturday and Sunday as possible, because we know in the past people have just gone wow on the Friday night and just gone, this is, I've got to know something. We only encourage first timers to go for that Saturday, which is the intermediate, and they'll learn so much there that when we do come back again into the area, they'll go, right, now I want the advanced, which is on the Sunday. So it's, like I said, it's information overload, but that book's going to be crucial. That you put, and it's a decent enough bound book. It's a nice enough book to keep in your shelf. And we've found over the past seminars that people do come back to us even from the first seminar saying, yeah, this is still, helping them out. So, and we're still learning, Maddie. We're still learning, mate. We're still getting out there, and we try and network with as many people as possible who have come along to these events. And they're like the lady down in your part of town. She's been a powerhouse in her area, and she's gathered quite a force of people now around what she's doing in her area, and she's calling the system out, and she's having such a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, and that's the way to look at it. This is fun.
It is.
Like when last time I went to court for the speeding fine, I think just the fact that I had this huge grin on my face that I'm like, yeah, I'm going to have some fun, as they ask me. So I understand you wish to fight this. I'm like, with every bone in my body, grinning from ear to ear. I reckon that was enough to make them go, yeah, we're dropping this one.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Because they want you in fear.
Yeah.
That's the key. This is what the system wants. They want you in fear of them, so that you will very quickly do as you are told. And of course, that's not how it's meant to be.
No, it's supposed to be the other way around.
That's it.
They're supposed to be afraid of the people going, hang on, pitchforks, fiery torches. We're walking down the street. We're getting Frankenstein and his monster.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
So
what we've seen in the past few years is not good. It's the
No.
first time in our history as a race that we've seen this sort of tyrannical power exercised over us. And look at
Well,
the
at least here in Australia, I think, we have a look at what happened in Russia 100 years ago that led to the Communist Empire again. Another Socialist Workers' Party, might I add, was the facilitator for the, USSR turning into the wonderful communist dictatorship that it became. And again, a Socialist Workers' Party in Germany was quite successful in creating the Nazi campaign, which again led people to some, pretty dark days. So, here we are with another Socialist Workers' Party pretty much in almost full control of the country at the moment. And, well, if you like what it's been so far, you can't wait to see what's happening next, I'm sure. Just sit back and let it happen. She'll be all right. Trust in the plan. That'll
oh,
help.
yeah,
Fuck.
the
What a
plan you
dumb
don't know
fucking
about.
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the plan you don't know about until it's too late. But
Mm.
yeah, this is the first time in history we've ever been medicated.
Yeah, that's true. A global medication and a global power grab. It's like everything over the last, God knows how many thousand years when you look at it
Mm.
historically from, dictator after dictator and empire after empire has sort of been mounting to this one final showdown. And yeah, we are on the edge, and yeah, it's time to get shit moving, eh?
It
It's
is. And
arm
let's,
yourself with knowledge.
yeah, and we're still trying to figure out what it is that they've medicated people with, and
Yes.
what the ramifications of that's going to be in the future. So I know people in the medical field are basically throwing out all their old textbooks, and they're just going, we're going to have to start again.
Mm,
We're now observing and learning.
mm,
And this is sad, but this is as a result of tyrannical government.
mm,
I know in the March 2020, Darren and I were yelling it as loud as we could through the radio show and saying they can't do any of this stuff. They
mm.
cannot shut you down. They have no power to do that in the law. Even the public health legislation, they don't have this power. But people were just marching along and doing as they were told. It's just sad.
Yeah.
But here we are 3 years later and just going, wow, okay. Now what are we going to do? Pick up the pieces and do it again.
Well, it seems like it certainly shook the tree. A lot of people have certainly woken up. I remember going to some of those early meetings and just seeing people bawling their eyes out because the sudden shock of reality had slapped them in the face so cruelly. They were struggling to come to terms with it. And I just sort of pat people on the back and go, "Hey, look, it's okay. Look, I've had you guys haven't listened to me for a long time, but you're here to listen now." But give a thought to those who are still asleep and what they're about to go through, because at least you woke up now. Imagine how bad it is for those who haven't woken up and are queuing up for the fucking clot shot right now.
That's
You know,
right. Sadly.
so and again, for those who woke up through that and have unfortunately, subjected themselves to this, clot shot or bloody nanotech or whatever the fuck it is, because I think it's a wide array of different things. I don't think, judging by the kinds of reactions, we're seeing all sorts of different shit, and obviously each technological medical fraternity has decided to implement it in a different way. And it's a case of which one works best, what results are we getting the best out of this, which is again where they wanted everything so heavily tracked and registered, in my opinion, is that we needed to see, right, which batch number did what to which group of people, and why you've got certain communities that are having problems to the point where even the mainstream media are pointing out, oh yeah, heart attacks are more prevalent in these particular areas, as if there was something about that area that might have caused it.
Mm.
Interesting.
It is. And this lipid nanoparticle that exists within all of these branded medications, never before used in this way, and yet under the law here in Australia, under the Gene Technology Act, it needs to be licensed.
Mm,
And the pharmaceutical companies had an obligation to submit an application to have these new products before they were publicly distributed, to have it licensed. And the TGA and all of our bureaucratic networks with respect to health here in Australia are required, are statutorily bound. They're what's known as creatures of statute. They are bound to follow the law so that these pharmaceutical companies, when they bring new products in, can provide evidence that, yes, they've been tested, they've been licensed as a result of that testing, and now they can go out to the general public. Well, all of that fell away. So this is poor governance right through the system, and they need to be held to account for breaking their statutory obligation.
Oh, yeah.
And that means, according to law, there's going to be some fairly severe consequences. And this is the only thing that's stopping this from happening is people don't know what to do. Oh, do I go to the police? Well, no, because they were holding the hands of the government through this whole process.
They became the goon squad.
So what do I do?
And any good copper walked away.
That's right. And so what do? Oh, do I go to a lawyer? Well, they were there too. So what do? Yeah, you privately prosecute. You bring about a private prosecution. And that private prosecution then brings on justice. This is what it's meant to be. This is how justice is meant to operate in a land that's under the crown. That's the benefit of the imperial crown. Don't take any notice of Star Wars. The Imperials are not the enemy. The imperial law system has been tried and tested, and it's been set up to make government accountable to the people. And Australia was the final litmus in that test. That was to show now we're going to hand the power of governance over to the people through that constitution, through the referendum clause and through section 123 of the constitution. And we're going to say, hey, you have the power through the elector, and the representative is duly bound to seek permission from the people before they start to make laws outside of what they've all been granted power to make laws under. That's the key, and we have dropped the ball in that sense. We have dropped the ball. So we have to pick that ball up, and we have to start prosecuting.
Definitely.
We have to let them know.
This ties into Lynn asked this question quite some time ago, and I think it's very relevant to what you're saying now. What about the World Health Organization's pandemic treaty that gets voted on in a couple of days? Can Albo go ahead and sign us up without a referendum? From what you're just saying, I would say that's a big fat no. Well, I mean, he can go and do it, but it's about as unlawful as it gets.
Well, Australia is still bound through Clause 2. Australia's sovereignty, and I mean sovereignty of government, is bound through Clause 2 of the Constitution, which means the United Kingdom, being the mother country, they're the only ones who can draft a treaty, or they can sign to a treaty. Okay, Australia, yes, the Commonwealth have limited treaty powers, but it cannot conflict with the law of the land. Okay, so if there is whatever they're trying to sign over takes away the power already granted to our government, then yes, there is a restriction. And Albo can't sign. In my understanding of the treaty with the World Health Organization, they don't have that power because they've already got a granted power within the Constitution with respect to health funding, and the states have the power over health registration, and the federal government have the power over health products that come into the country. And that's what I spoke of earlier, the Gene Technology Act and the Therapeutic Goods Association legislation. That gives them these powers. Now, the World Health Organization treaty is taking those powers away. So, yes, they would need to go to the electors to get permission to bring about any form of expression of interest to that treaty, and it would be through the mother country. So it's not a straightforward, yeah, no worries, I'll just sign on the dotted line. No, it's not. You're not representing the people when you're doing that. Now, I mean, if you want to go right down this rabbit hole, who is the Prime Minister in the Constitution? Who is he? Because he doesn't exist. I've been looking at that document for 25 years and I still haven't seen the words Prime Minister anywhere inside that document. He doesn't have any power.
Well, I believe it's the Crown, you know.
Well, it's the Governor General and the governors of the states.
There you go.
And that's where the Crown representative is. So then I look and I say, okay, well, there's the Governor General, whoever it may be today, David Hurley or that new appointee. Okay, I want to see the letters patent that's appointed that the Governor General or that governor. Show me the letters patent signed by the monarch of the day appointing that individual. So
is it supposed to be an appointment? It's not something that the people get to vote on. It's So the British are supposed to send in their emissary, so to speak.
Well, the British, the monarch appoints on the advice and consent. So the advice and consent of their members of parliament here in Australia, they can take that recommendation on, and then the monarch signs the letters patent and then issues them accordingly. So that's the process. And this is what they tried to sort of fool us with the 1999 referendum, where they wanted us to vote in the Governor General. And that's it was a mask to a very dark situation if we had said yes to that, because they were calling for a republic. But they lost that, and they've set up their republic regardless, and they've just been putting up the smoke and mirrors the whole time while they've been operating this republic. And this is the evidence of that is the fact that we've got this Prime Minister, and yes, he's been there since Federation, and therein lies a problem. It's not perfect, but by crikey, those who drafted from Federation from 1900 forward, there's no innocence out there. The legal system know full well there's no such thing as a Prime Minister. In fact, the first Prime Minister that was ever appointed lasted a week, and then Barth took the job on. So someone dropped some smarty's gone, hang on, I've just been given a role that's not constitutionally recognised. I can't be here. See you later. And then Barton took it on because he was one of the framers. And it was sort of like, gee, there's been a mess ever since Federation. And that's only because the people were never brought up to speed on the whole thing. So, it's not perfect, but it's time now. We've got these wonderful forms of communication and the like happening for people to wake up, and we can get to places pretty quickly, to wake up and start empowering their own communities and start asking awkward questions and saying, well, listen, if you're not going to represent me properly in this constituency, then get out of the way, because we've got people who are willing to stand up. And with the knowledge of the Constitution, when you step into that parliament, watch them get very nervous, because that's what it's going to end up being. And this is what we want. This is our aim, is to get as many people with knowledge of that law into those corridors of so-called power, where in fact it's just the corridors of servitude to the people, and bring about justice. Really, it's what's needed. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
When you read it, the mere fact that we have premiers in each state and prime ministers who have usurped the role of those who have been constitutionally appointed to be that voice for that particular state. And this is this is where we've failed. We've been continually acknowledging the usurper instead of going, hang on, does this entity actually have any authority? No, they don't. Only if you give it to them. This is understand. This is the seminar is about structuring what government is and how it can express power and who you should be taking notice of. There are laws. The framers of our constitution saw this misbehaviour, the potential for massive misbehaviour, and they established that constitution to look out for that. But they needed the people to understand what it was saying before it could actually be operable. And that's what we're trying to do, is just wake people up, and just understand what executive is, understand what Parliament's role is, understand what the judicial role is. And until you understand those three entities, then you are vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's as simple as it gets, mate. It really is. That's the way it's just. And none of these, you'll find most of these taxes that are drilling their way into our bank accounts. That's what they've been established through fraud. Yeah, it's just straight out fraud. They have no power to bring these things out. And and yet the High Court, when you go in there and you put the blinkers on them and you say, right, this is what we want answers. We want answers to these particular questions. Yeah, they work. It can work. It can work. So, we're just trying to empower people to wake up and take a confident walk from the day you learn this stuff through life, and you'll be a lot better off for it.
Definitely. So Marla's asked, can Darren, but I'm guessing you mean Darrell because Darren's not here. Please speak about the digital ID and corporations mandating it for customers and employees. Now, I'm kind of feeling like, the epic failure of the director's ID is now about to be trying second run. We'll try the whole population this time. And I feel like the solution is pretty much the same as the director's ID. Just don't play.
Well, it's very simple. It really comes back to when you know what the Constitution says, then you're able to operate FOI. And FOI can be your friend. And this is what we teach you at the seminar. So when I look through the Constitution and I look at the powers that have been handed to our Parliament to draft legislation, I don't see permission or any head of power for them to draft legislation relating to a form of digital identification. Okay, there is no authority. So if there's no authority, then the law's not worth the paper it's written on. There has to be a head of power. Now, the digital ID has already been tested in the courts and it failed. ASIC went to prosecute a particular individual, and this is on the ASIC website, and they dropped the case. Now, the ABRS, which is the Australian Business Registration Services, is overseen by the Commissioner of Taxation. And it's like, well, why would I want that entity overseeing business identification for directors? Okay, well, we look deeper into that, and it turns out the Australian Business Registration Services is just a brand. It's like KFC or McDonald's or Ford or Holden. It's a brand. It doesn't have authority. Yes, it's mentioned in the Corporations Act, but then where did the legislator get the authority to bring those, I think, 4 sections of law into the Corporations Act? I don't see I can't tie the two together comfortably enough. So I'm compelled to conduct an FOI and ask the Attorney General, where is the authority for this particular body of legislation? And it's not there. So you've got to go back to the simple solution. And that's the way you just call out the authority. So, there it is in a nutshell, mate.
There you go.
And that's what we do in the seminar. We teach people how to structure those questions.
Well, there you go. That should be reason enough for people to want to lob up and have a look at what you guys have got to offer, to learn how to do that stuff. Because I know I'm keen as, I'm definitely looking forward to making the last days of our Labor government here in Townsville as painful as possible. And I believe the Know Your Rights seminar is a wonderful tool for which we can make Aaron Harper, Les Walker, and Scott Stewart's life a living hell for the last few months, to the point that they won't want to be re-elected.
That's it.
And, the remaining Labor cronies in the council, we unfortunately didn't get rid of all of them. There's a few left. We want to make their lives painful too. We want to make sure that Labor feels about as welcome as a fart in a spacesuit in this town.
That's exactly it, right? In fact, anyone that expresses the mantra of the Liberal or Labor Party or Greens, they're not welcome.
Yeah.
If they're going to stand up in our parliaments, state or federal, then do so with your constituent as your direct advisor.
Yep.
That's what we want. We're not interested in your allegiances to particular financial institutions. We're not interested in that. We're just interested in you dealing with the whims of your constituent.
Exactly.
It's that, right? And that's just all it is. It's not rocket science.
No, it's pretty straightforward. Do the right thing by the people, and people will support you. But we've got this billboard up down the road. I think it's still up. From our local dickhead Les Walker, saying that he represents the people. And I'm like, no, you don't. You represent the Labor Party. That's a fucking lie. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm half tempted to take him to court for fucking flat out. What was it? The term I'm looking for when a corporation misrepresents themselves and sells a product that's not what it's supposed to be.
Masquerading as a
I mean, outside of the fact he's flat out lied, he's selling that he gives a shit about the people. But how can you, if you're a member of the Labor Party, you can't represent the people and their wills. You have to represent the party. They are a fucking anthill, It's a fucking hive, Like there's no room for freedom of thought within that party. Not that there's much in the Liberal Party, but there is a bit of flexibility. You just won't get another seat, as we've seen with some, say Senator Rennick, for example. He's come out and starting to represent the people and do the right thing. Oh, we can't have you in the Liberal Party anymore. Enjoy your final days, mate. Which seems to have further inspired him.
I mean, you hear this term every time there's a change of government. Or now there's a Labor government. Or now there's a Liberal government. Or now hang on. I look in the Constitution. I don't see where a particular party after an election gets to rule the roost. I don't. I've been looking again under the same heading of Prime Minister. Where the hell is this power constitutionally granted to one particular train of thought or one allegiance to a particular line of policy? It doesn't exist.
Yeah,
it's a myth, and this is what they've been running. They've been running this Ponzi scheme and calling it government. No, that's not what the Constitution grants. And yet, when was the last time we had a referendum? It was only last year, wasn't it?
And it was an epic failure for the Labor government, but a massive win for the Australian people, who clearly had, the majority of Australian people at least, seen through it, which was really good, And I think that certainly stopped their idea of pushing a republic or any other form of referendums dead in its fucking tracks, as they fell flat on their face with something they thought they could so easily win. Hey, we'll get this through just like we got through our election. We'll say nothing about it. Yeah, that worked really well.
Didn't it? And people woke up. We're waking up a little bit each time. There's been 49 referendums since Federation and only 6, I think, have had a yes.
Mm.
And every time I look at those referendum questions, it's not about building on the body of constitutional law. No, it's about trying to take it away. They're trying to usurp the Constitution. They're trying to throw it under the bus. And of course, the Labor Party and their socialist agenda. Well, isn't socialism just communism in slow motion?
Yeah, until it's voted in, and then they fast forward.
Yeah, that's right. Just wake people up.
Yeah.
Oh, the Labor Party are for the blue collar worker. Yeah, right.
Yeah, they're pigeonholing you and giving you a group of people, and we're going to set one against the other, and divided they fall, and it's the same old military construct. But Valerie here is asking, can Darrell comment if we are compelled to vote? Even so, I mean,
wow,
compulsory voting.
There's a rabbit hole. Well, Section 41 of the Constitution is the clause you go to with respect to voting and electors' rights. And when I look at Section 41, you have the right to vote. Okay. It doesn't say it's compulsory. And when I look at Section 128 of the Constitution, I see again, you have the right to vote, but it's not compulsory. So they brought in compulsory enrolment in 1912 in Queensland. And in 1918, they brought in compulsory voting in the Commonwealth. And then it spread throughout the states. Again, there is no head of power for the legislator to make a law compelling people to vote under a threat of a fine. There is no head of power. Okay? Now, when I was challenging this back in 2002 at the local court level, I was apparently the first one since 1923 to challenge the compulsory voting.
Wow.
And I walked into the court and I used a law that it's an inherited law from England, and it's been in England since it's even earlier. It's hundreds of years old, which is why there's no compulsory voting in England. And it says freedom of election. So the king cannot commandeth or force anyone to take part in any election. Straightforward. It's not rocket science. You don't have to get out the legalese book and dictionary to understand what the hell it's saying. No, very clearly. And of course, the lawyer that was defending or prosecuting for the Victorian Electoral Commission, she seriously nearly fell over when she read that, because she'd never seen that law ever. They'd never shown her that law at university. And
I thought ignorance was strength. Shouldn't she have the will to stand up with all that strength?
Well, she nearly fell over, literally in the foyer at the Dandenong Magistrates Court. She nearly fell over. And luckily, there was a bureaucrat standing right next to her. He grabbed her by the scruff of the neck, dragged her off to the corner of the foyer and gave her a lecture. And then then I found myself in another courtroom, and I was being bounced from courtroom to another courtroom to the point where I'd lost where they actually were. And by the time I found them, they had brought the hammer down and they'd given me a fine of $150 for not voting.
That sounds like a typical tactic of the Victorian court system. I'm pretty confident I've seen that happen before.
So there's so much in the way of voting and bypassing the compulsory elections. It's not funny. And there is a clause in the Commonwealth Electoral Act which says, you can announce that you have a religious exemption. So that's the only card that they'll deal out and allow you. But when you call into account their ability to draft that law in the first place, watch them run in all directions.
There you go. So hopefully that answered the question for you, Valerie.
Yes.
We might open it up for some questions now because we are, about an hour and a half in, and I'm sure you've got other things to do. It is a fine day, or at least it is out here. I don't know. I noticed you got a jumper on, so it's probably a bit cold and miserable down there in Victoria as usual.
Oh, it's about, I think it's about 10 degrees, but the sun's out.
Shit, 10 degrees, man. That's like the coldest point it's going to get somewhere in July.
Yeah, well, you're alive in Melbourne.
Yeah, I know the chattering of your teeth keeps you awake at night to let you know. Yeah, you can keep that weather, my friend. I'm certainly I've had my day in the sun, or the day in the cold, I should say. I'm going to keep the rest of my days in the sun. So yeah, nice, beautiful weather here in Townsville. I hope you get a chance to enjoy it. We get enough people to come here, and and you guys are going to be here at the sweet time of the year.
That was the aim.
Yeah. Yeah, she was a bit rough a few months ago. Nice and hot.
Right.
So, all right. So, yep. And listen to the Stock Exchange to see the corporation. We should be able to challenge them through the Corporations Act. So,
with respect to the ID,
I'm thinking so. I'm not sure what Linda is referring to here. It can be a bit tricky sometime in the chat because people are having a chat in amongst themselves, and I'm dropping in and out of conversations. And bet you're glad you're up here. Bloody oath, I am. Nice and warm. And boy, are we having some fun at the moment. Janine, did you see I made Channel 7? I made Channel 7. Darrell.
Wow.
Yeah. For my interview with Troy Thompson, who they're doing everything they can to grill because he's not their chosen Labor puppet. So all the media are just going at him hammer and tong. So in a desperate act to try and find something to criminalize him for, they've gone through my entire 2.5-hour podcast and picked out a couple of little lines, and now they're trying to turn that into something. So I want to welcome all the new Channel 7 viewers and the Townsville Bulletin viewers, and the Guardian even has brought light to my podcast. So I hope we've got a whole new bunch of people willing and open to see the world for what it is and not what the mainstream's been telling you. And if so, I welcome you on board for the ride. This is going to be one hell of a show. Not just from this point of view here of the North Queensland Freedom Network, but all the things I hope we can achieve.
We'll get there, mate.
Oh yeah. Oh well, 10 degrees. Can't imagine that temperature during the day. So yeah, Jan's definitely a North Queenslander. I'm sure Susan, who watches us from Scotland, is probably going 10 degrees. Struth, that's a heat wave. Someone said that the Australian government are a corporation, and that was my response.
Well, the Australian government, I mean, again, we need people, and this is what we do at the seminars. We help you focus on what the Constitution grants is a legislative power. And words are the key. Australian government is one of those myths. There's no reference to it in the Constitution at all. And in fact, back in 1973, when the new system took over under an individual called Gough Whitlam, they advertised quite heavily, it's time for a change. Yes, we got the change all right, and it was handing it to a body corporate structure, and it was putting away this awkward body politic and re-establishing this body corporate imposter to operate as a body politic. And in the process, they had a law. It was called the Statute Law Revision Act of 1973, and in that act, and it's very comprehensive, wherever the word Commonwealth appeared in a particular piece of legislation, that word was to be omitted and replaced with the word Australia. So Australia, anything Australian, is in fact part of the problem. It's part of this smoke and mirrors they've put up, masquerading that they are in fact government when they're not. So, yeah, it's quite in depth, but it's fascinating when you get down to these sort of tidbits of information, and it helps you build confidence with respect to when you're dealing with these imposters, as to rather than just say, oh, you're all a bunch of crims, get out of my face. You get them to admit that they're crims.
Or trap them.
Trap them. And that way, it's best that they leave you well and truly alone because you know too much. Because power. There is power in knowledge, and that's what we're empowering people with, is knowledge. Don't just put them under this heading of, oh, they're all just corporate, so throw them under the bus. No, get them to admit that they're a bunch of crims. Get them to show you where they actually have power. The likes of all of these sitting politicians at the moment, well, we know we don't sit according to the Constitution, but hey, what the heck? We've still got to get funding for the childcare centre or the hospital or whatever. And that's their excuse. Well, it's not good enough. It's not good enough because there are penalties prescribed in English law for those people who have that attitude in our system of government. The laws have already been written, and we've inherited those laws as to what we do with those sort of people. So do you want to find out what those penalties are, or are you going to stand up and represent the constituent? Forget about your political party allegiances. Just stick to what the law provides. You're a creature of statute. That's what you are. That's it. Simple. Peel the onion down to its core. That's what you are. If you have no allegiance to your constituent, if you have an allegiance to a foreign power, and under the Constitution, you got to get out. Stage left, don't come back. And we'll deal with you accordingly. And this is when I was in Parliament as an advisor to a senator in 2016. We were trying to wake One Nation up to the power of under the Constitution, Section 49, and where our Senate, our Commonwealth Senate, can sit as a high court of Parliament. Okay? Forget about your high court, public high court. This is a separate court with the most power, a high court of Parliament. And they can wield a big, powerful stick, and they can throw people in jail. In every single parliamentary building in this country and in England has a jail cell.
And Len was alluding to this the other day. Well, not alluding, he flat out told us. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's there. Our High Court of Australia confirmed this in 1955 in a High Court case. So the power's there. It's written by the framers of our Constitution back at Federation. There's a couple of pages in our annotation to the Constitution devoted to Section 49 of the Constitution and the power of our Senate. And yet our Senate is one of the most dumbed down that we have. Pauline Hanson gets up and has a bit of a squirt every now and then, and Malcolm Roberts, but they're not exercising their real power. No matter how many times I stood and told them, and when I was in there with them, and they didn't like that, and especially after, it's falling on deaf ears. And now, believe me, the likes of Pauline Hanson, she was completely in the pockets of the Liberal Party. And I'm pretty sure still to this day, because her chief of staff is ex-Liberal.
Yeah.
So, really, Queensland, you've got to stand up to her and put her back in a place, because she's out of control. She needs to be reminded.
So would you say she's doing this because there's not enough, strength in numbers for One Nation to be able to do the right thing? Like, as I understand it, it's been brought to her attention, many of the things that we're discussing here, and she'd rather throw Rod Culleton under the bus than deal with it. Do you think it's just a numbers game, or do you think she really is in the pocket of, other people?
Oh, I know for a fact she's in the pocket of other people.
Mm,
We know that 100% sure. There's no ifs, buts, or maybe. And when you only have to look at the vote when they got rid of Culleton, she stood with the Liberal Party to vote him into the Court of Disputed Returns. So she was not happy with him, and she was particularly not happy with the attention that Rod Culleton was getting. Just as a personality, she was not happy. So, she's really got to get told, listen, mate, I think you've had your time. See you later. Malcolm Roberts, he knew as well, and he turned his back on us. They didn't want knowledge of the Constitution. Believe me, Malcolm Roberts had never even picked up a copy of that Constitution until we showed it to him. I was the one that walked down to the legal bookstore in Parliament House and got him a copy. And he was running around like a kid with a new toy when he had a copy of that Constitution. He was going, oh, wow, I can do this and that and Senate estimates. And oh, wow, what do you think I should structure? And it's like, wow, man, you had no idea. And yet that is the job description. When you voted in as a senator, that's what you're expected. You're expected to be the check and balance of any legislation proposal coming up from the lower house. And what are you checking and balancing that proposal against? The Constitution. And yet you've never picked it. It's just like, what? This is why we've got a problem today. Yeah. There's no means test on those standing for Parliament.
Can you win the popularity contest? That's pretty much all the only basic requirement is.
That's it. I'm standing under the blue banner or under the red banner or under whatever colour banner, and you got to vote for me because I can speak the best and I can do this and I'm going to do that for you. And I'm not interested, dude. Seriously, you're there to do a job as prescribed under the law. You're a creature of statute. Do it or piss off. Because this is why Section 44 of the Constitution was drafted and Section 46 to keep these people in line. So we don't want those standing up on the box and saying, look at me. This is what those sections were designed to do. And only when it's convenient for them, they use those sections to throw people like Culleton out in using this creature called the Court of Disputed Returns.
And again, protecting their democracy?
Their system. Because by crikey, he was rattling that boat. He was really causing them no end of trouble, or they couldn't get him out fast enough. It was just, wow, because we were calling out the High Court and the standing of the Queen. And they didn't want that. The Attorney General, George Brandis, he was just like, wow, he wanted us out quick. And he did. They conspired with the High Court and threw him out. And it was all a breach of the Constitution. This is, we knew what they were doing. We were running around like chooks with our heads cut off, trying to bloody well patch up. And unfortunately, Culleton had a few skeletons in his closet, and that wasn't ideal. But we gave him a direction and said, right, this is the way you got to go. And, if you can achieve that, then everything will be okay. But no, he wasn't perfect. None of us are. And, he didn't do exactly what he was meant to do. And essentially they threw him out on bankruptcy, which he's still fighting to this day. But, it's can get messy, but we did call them out, and we still know it's a weak point.
So When I last was down there in Melbourne and I jumped on the show with you guys, there was a bit of a bone of contention with you and Rod. And, I remember sitting there and you were explaining to me during the ad break, what had happened. I thought, okay, cool. I've gotten Darrel's, honest opinion here. He's going to water this down for the radio. And then the switch gets flicked, bang, you just went straight off and repeated exactly what you said to me. And I'm like, my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, okay, cool. How are you guys going? Have you managed to sort of build some bridges yet since that time?
Oh no, well, I haven't spoken to Rod since the election.
Right.
Yeah, but that's his path, and I'm not holding any grudges against Rod. We parted ways as mates, so there was no ill, ill feelings or anything, and that's fine. He still powers along with Darren. Darren is his main advisor now, and Neil in Perth, and that's terrific. But I'm behind the scenes all the way through this, so I'm not disconnected completely. But he had. Like I said, he didn't do what we'd advised him to do, and as a consequence of that, he lost his seat in Parliament. So that's fine. We have to move on and keep going. And yes, we had an opportunity, and we did stir the pot a little bit when we were in there. But he still managed to get a fair bit of attention. He is a character, and we were playing on that character role to get as much attention to what we were doing as possible. Yes, he didn't understand a lot of what was going on, but he got up to speed eventually. It can be quite complex, and anyone that's sort of come to our seminars can quickly gather that, there is a lot more to this than meets the eye. But, it is a very powerful tool when you can get a senator into that parliament. And going back to what you were asking earlier, yes, it is partly a numbers game, but it's how you play that within the parliament. And this is what we were doing very effectively when we were in Cullerton's office there. Our office was being overrun with staffers from other senators going, wow, where did you guys come from? Your knowledge of the Constitution. And they were sending their best lawyers out after us to try and undo us. And we were sending them packing within about 5 minutes because they don't get taught any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why we were so dangerous in there. And funnily enough, after the Labor Party won the last election, they actually reduced the staff capacity of each of the smaller and independents that were running in Parliament. That was quite deliberate because they didn't want people like myself coming in and stirring the pot.
Yeah.
They wanted control, and this is what that whole program was about. And of course, I'm thinking when I heard that, well, they don't have the power to even do that. What are you doing? Why are you laying down and not resisting? It's just it's mind-boggling, and this is lack of knowledge of the law is bizarre. This is why we've got such a mess today. Doesn't matter where you are in the world. Although the US, the average Joe in the street in the US have far more knowledge of their constitutional rights than we do here in Australia.
I certainly used to think it was the other way around. I used to think it was just, the Americans were just clueless and had no idea because they kept voting these frigging idiots in, but then you see the Joe Biden fiasco. It's like, well, we've got the most useless frigging weekend at Bernie's frigging resurrected from the grave sort of puppet up there or on display, in the most shameful display of incompetency I've ever seen, and what seemingly is possibly one of the most rigged elections in human history. And now the fiasco of election interference with, court battles to prevent Trump from even coming back again. But in the meantime, it's paved the way for Robert F. Kennedy to move in as an independent and totally throw the system into a whole nother state of chaos. Wow, what one hell of a show is going on over there. It's certainly worth a watch, like fuck the, movies and daytime TV shit, like look at this. This is real reality TV happening
This
here.
is it.
Like this fucking gold.
It
So
is.
I'm busting to see what happens, and I'm looking forward to seeing that kind of shit happening here in Australia, where people start rising up and going, "Come on, let's give the people a fucking show."
Yeah, come on, people.
So yeah, all you viewers out there, come on, let's get some fucking candidates in there with a nice big set of cojones ready to fucking stir some shit up. I'll give you a hand. Like
Yeah.
I gave Troy a hand, and look at the show we've got going on there. This is going to be heaps fun, and he's booked in to come and have a yarn with us again next month, which is really good. He won't talk to the mainstream media. So for all you guys who have had your direct traffic directed from the Townsville Bulletin and the Guardian and all that, he won't talk to us. So all right, you can come have a chat directly to Troy Thompson via this network and bypass their bullshit. It's going to be great fun. But is the Kuna? Is there anything going on in the background that is giving these politicians a headache that you can update us on? Wow, well that's a big fucking can of worms,
isn't it? Wow. Well, I guess as far as people in West Australia is concerned, it's the mandate. Yeah, that's causing the politicians there no end of nightmares. Federally, I guess it's the Attorney General's Department that really copped the ramifications of what we're on about through FOIs. So I'd imagine their department's something you'd want to be a fly on the wall to look over. That'd be quite entertaining when they get these FOI questions coming to them, properly structured FOIs. But yeah, I mean, there's so much going on. It is a very interesting world we're living in right now, and Australia, the US has got its stuff going on. Australia's got its stuff going on as well, and I guess there are a better source of what's really going on to be like the likes of Cairns News or the Kangaroo Court media. At my end, it's just purely the weekly events that we report on each week at the radio show, especially the emails we get. How do we deal with this? How do we deal with that? We did have a big stint on the ID stuff, and yes, we're still dealing with that. We're still structuring the paperwork to go to the Attorney General regarding the Corporations Act and the like. So, yeah, there's not much else to report in that sense.
No worries. Have those cells, and I'm guessing we're referring to the ones here in the Senate that we were just talking about, ever been used? And I believe, didn't you say they've been used once?
Yeah, the High Court reported the ability in 1955. They have been used in the past, more back in the 19th century. This has always been a capacity with the English parliamentary system, the Westminster system. Here in Australia, yes, it was used around 1950 to 1955. They threatened it on one particular politician. I can't remember when exactly it was. It was earlier than, it was not long after Federation. There was one politician who was ousted because, and he was judged through a High Court of Parliament regarding his insolvency. If you look at in 2016, there was Senator Day under Section 47 of the Constitution. There was a very lengthy debate in the Senate regarding his standing as a senator and whether he fell foul of Section 44(5) of the Constitution. And it was found that he was. And so they then and this is where they the House knowledge didn't extend to Section 49. They voted to put him into the Court of Disputed Returns. And the Court of Disputed Returns was set up as a distraction. And it was set up by the Labor Party in 1975. And they brought out what was called the Common Informers Act. And if you go to Section 46 of the Constitution, it talks about the common informer and the power of the people to remove a member of Parliament. So there's no restriction as far as time. So it doesn't matter whether that member's been sitting there for 18 months or 2 years. If they fall foul of Section 44 of the Constitution, you or I, being a constituent of that member, of that representative, can take them to a court of competent jurisdiction and have them removed. And for every day that they sit after that order comes through the court, then you as the prosecutor gain monetarily. And it's prescribed how much you gain monetarily in Section 46. So in 1975, the Labor Party, or the government at the day, removed that right under Section 46 through legislation, and they handed this power of a court of competent jurisdiction to the High Court of Australia. And that was incorrect. There was a constitutional restriction to that power being handed to the High Court, because traditionally that court of competent jurisdiction was always the Supreme Court of the state, wherever that member came from, and you called them out through that section in the Supreme Court.
So even if they were federal or state members, it still was dealt by a state Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and there is a constitutional restriction to the High Court operating as a court of disputed returns, and that's Section 77I of the Constitution, because there can be no designated powers given to the High Court other than the designated powers laid out in Section 75 of the Constitution and 76, and that's it. So they're in breach of Section 77I to label the High Court as being a court of disputed returns. And there's a famous case of Sue versus Hill in 1999, which called out a senator who was standing in South Australia, and she was actually a One Nation senator, and she was born in England. And they deemed her to be from a foreign power. And the High Court of Disputed Returns made that ruling. Now, when you look at the rules of the High Court sitting as the Court of Disputed Returns, and the rules for that court are in the Commonwealth Electoral Act, it says very clearly that you cannot appeal any ruling out of the High Court sitting as the Court of Disputed Returns. And that is not a court. That is not a court. Your court system has been established so you have this right of appeal. And they took that away through the Commonwealth Electoral Act, and they said in the Common Informers Act that you only have 40 days to challenge a sitting member of Parliament's standing in Parliament, where there was no time restriction in Section 46. So yes, we've got a lot of work to do in that Parliament to bring it back to a constitutional definition. And unfortunately, the people who are sitting here at the moment They, it's
Lack
just,
the desire and the intelligence.
yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. I would have
Mm.
said something else, but
Well, please enlighten me. I'd love to hear what your opinion is.
well, they're about as useful as an ashtray on a motorbike.
Rightio. Yep. So this question, I'm jumping the gun here. Can this be done to remove elbow? Says Lynn, since it's pretty pertinent what we're talking about.
Yeah, you can do it. It's going to be I think it would take more or less a class action, but you first of all got to challenge the Common Informers Act, 1975. You can do these things. You can go to the High Court and say, right, please look at Section 77I of the Constitution, and then you tell us whether the High Court can sit as a court of disputed returns. And then look at the Common Informers Act. And yes, there are, when you look at Section 46 of the Constitution, it starts off with the words, until the Parliament otherwise provides. But those words are subject to the Constitution. So they can't just go, well, the Parliament's decided to create this whole new definition of Section 46. No, they can't. No, they can't do that. They can make subtle changes, but they cannot take away the body of what it's telling you to do. And they've done that through the Common Informers Act. So you have to put it. You got to go to the High Court, put the blinkers on the High Court. So answer these questions, yes or no. And then when you get your result, you then accordingly you re-enliven your state Supreme Court, and you take the likes of Albo or whoever sitting as a member of Parliament and challenge them on their allegiance to a foreign power, which is a breach of Section 44 of the Constitution. So it's this is what we try and do through the seminars. We structure it so that you understand how that Constitution plays a role in straightening and ironing out this whole system. It has to be front and center when you call these people out. And this is what's wonderful. In 2017, there was a whole bunch of 16 politicians who were marched out the door because of breaching Section 44 of the Constitution.
Yeah, I remember that.
And in 2023, they were asking the people to ratify some new sections or a new chapter to the Constitution. So it's not like this Constitution's this old moth-ridden document, rotting away in the corner. No, it's alive and well, but we've really got to get some life into it, and it's begging the people to put that life into it. Forget about the politicians. It's the people's document, and the people have to use that to call these parasites out. The idiot brigade, and just oust them. Said, we've had enough of your fun and games, your mad system, and now we want people who are bound to that law and who are going to uphold that law all the way through.
The Linda Free's spirit here is so can you give people some ideas on things they can do? I hear so many people are aware, but they often say they don't know what we can do about it. I mean, honestly, I'm pretty sure what we've really kind of been trying to hammer home here is arm yourself with that knowledge. That's I think is the best answer to that question. And, lobbing up to one of these seminars or, get the home study course, get that information, and again, know your rights. And Darren and Darrel and Mike, they don't endorse me. They don't pay me. I'm not endorsing. I endorse what they're doing because I've used it and it's been effective for me. And I've gained a great wealth of knowledge from, reaching out and grabbing these tools, so that's what I would say. Would you concur?
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
Nice. The Constitution debate. Which one is valid? The Green Book, the Red Book, the 1900, the 1901. Let's put it to rest. We've got the constitutional expert here. Which constitution are we looking at once and for all? Because I've seen this question so many times.
It's called the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act 1900, United Kingdom. It's number 63 and number 64 under Queen Victoria. So it's called the 1900 Act. It's the way it is. 1901 is not what it's properly called. It's 1900. Now, as far as the Green Book and the Red Book, they're referring to the annotation of the Constitution, which is Robert Garran and John Quick. They were two of the people that were involved in Federation in the 10 years leading up to Federation. They drafted the Quick and Garran, which when you walk into a courtroom anywhere in Australia, you're holding that Quick and Garran. The judiciary is aware that that Constitution has just walked into that court. They all see that Quick and Garran as the Constitution. And I've tested this myself many times successfully. And yes, they do take notice of the Red Book. It just happens to be red. In the past 10 years, they've chosen to split the two books up into John Quick's part of the annotation and Robert Garran's part. But that's pretty much it. As far as when you go to your local government printer and you source a hard copy of the Constitution, then you're given a multicolored sort of version of the Constitution, which also has, after the Constitution itself, it's got the Australia Act 1986, Statute of Westminster 1931, and the Statute of the 1942 Westminster. And it's got a bit of history around the Constitution itself and the referendums. There have been those certain people in West Australia who believe that the Constitution shouldn't be attached to the Australia Act 1986. Well, as awkward as that act is, it was endorsed by Westminster. There was a delegation that went over to Australia under Section 5138 of the Constitution, and they requested, as members of each state, for the English Westminster Parliament to pass that act called the Australia Act. The Westminster Parliament did. They gave royal assent to that act. What the Australians did after that, they then created their own version of the Australia Act. So this is where there's a bit of a problem. Now, if we go back to Section 5138, each state, when they made that application to the United Kingdom to draft the Australia Act, they did not do it according to their own state's requirements. And a lot of the states failed the litmus test in order to achieve that application under Section 5138. But the Australia Act endorses under Clause 5 of the Act the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act 1900. So it's always the POMs worked that out. They knew that there was some skullduggery going on, and they insisted that Clause 5 be inserted as the Australia Act is subject to the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act. It is the law of the land. So as far as I'm concerned, there is no red or green. There is the Constitution, as has been amended through referendums. And there has been a couple of amendments to that Constitution as a result of referendums. So, yeah, there is. It is a very powerful document and still intact enough to utilise today to put the system back in its place.
There you go. Sorry, just quickly sending a text because some workers trying to contact me.
Yeah, cool.
I'll leave a message on my message bank, I think, is the best solution to this one. I'll let it ring out. Sorry about that. Just these things happen. All right, so we should probably start wrapping this up. So let's have a quick look. What about the WHO pandemic treaty? You're gonna have to be more specific. I mean, that's just too vague. Again, what about the Parliament? When the Parliament removed Rod Culleton, we've already covered that. Just go back to earlier in the show. Can this be? We did the elbow bit. How can being a British citizen or being a former power, what the fuck? How can being British being a foreign power, Australia is part of the Commonwealth? Okay, so I'm going to try and reword that. Or you get what's being said, don't you?
Yeah, that's the Sue versus Hill case, and this is the big question mark. When the court came out with that ruling, it was like, what? Seriously, you only have to look at section 37 of the Constitution, 34, with respect to qualifying to be to stand at an election as a member of the lower or upper house of the Parliament. And in subsection 2, it says very clearly that you must be a subject of the Queen. Well, the Queen can only be the Queen of the United Kingdom as drafted in the Constitution. So, why would you have a High Court now saying, that's a foreign power? And that caused no end of dramas. And of course, for those like myself who know, yes, I could pull that apart in 5 minutes and throw it out if I was in front of the High Court. And they know that too. But don't forget, that court at the time was sitting as a court of disputed returns. It wasn't sitting as the High Court of Australia. When you look at the ruling on the public database, you'll see carefully off in one corner, sitting as the Court of Disputed Returns. It doesn't have that authority. The same rules that apply to the High Court do not apply to the High Court when it's sitting as a Court of Disputed Returns. So it's like this. Essentially, I would have been better off going down to the local public bar and getting an opinion off the barman, because it has about as much weight in law. And why the legal system's taking any notice of it is beyond me. But unfortunately, those who were advising Heather Hill were not historically aware of whether that ruling was valid or not. They should have just taken it straight to the Privy Council in London, and they should have just called the system out immediately. It would have taken them half an hour to knock the whole thing clean out the ballpark. But, that didn't happen. And that's unfortunately where we're at today. We've got a bunch of idiots running the brigade.
Lynn's asked another interesting question in regards to the World Economic Forum and their young leaders who have, managed to worm their way into power in various different countries and probably have, certain, people here, in regards to, obviously being a foreign power. Sarah Hanson-Young is apparently one plus Brett Sutton, allegedly.
Yep. Section 44, out the door. You've got an allegiance. Sorry. Yep. And they've said it publicly, right out the door. 44 prevails.
And again, I guess signing us up to these pandemic treaties, that's also, signing us up to a foreign power. So I don't understand how this can be even transpiring, which I believe is what Janine's alluding to with what about WEF and the WHO? Like, why are we listening to the UN in any way, shape or form? They are a foreign power.
They are, and there was no power for Australia to sign up to the UN. There's a perceived power, but constitutionally, it's never been properly challenged.
So, let me have a quick through. There's a lot of comments. I'm just going to P&M soup's not going to help me much. Australia Act put on place without referendum.
There was a referendum, actually.
Was there?
Yeah, 1984. Sorry. There were two questions. One was to do with casual vacancies in the Senate. The second question was the kicker. It was the states were seeking an equal power to that of the Commonwealth. And it got knocked back. It got knocked back. And they went, oh, bummer. What are we going to do now? Oh, no, we'll use Section 5138 and we'll go to the POMs and override the will of the people.
Mm.
That was gold. It only failed just. It was about 40, from memory, I think it was about 48% of Australians said yes. Not one state said yes as a whole, but when they added it all together, about 48% said yes. So it was like, wow, we just dodged a bullet there.
Yeah, wow. So this is a good question, particularly for those of us in Queensland. How the hell did the Queensland government get away with disposing of the upper house back in the 20s? Was it 28? I think it was.
1922.
22, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, so 1917, actually 1912, the Queensland Constitution was amended to include referendum, and 1917 the Labor Party were pushing.
Labor again.
The Labor Party were pushing to eliminate the upper house, and they put it to the people of Queensland, and they said, we want to eliminate the upper house because it's a peerage, inheritance thing, and it's just a bunch of rubbish. And the people, I think it was 68% of Queenslanders said, no, forget that idea. We want to maintain our upper house. Right. So they went away with their tail between their legs. And then in 22, the Labor Party got in, and the first thing they did was eliminate the upper house. And the governor at the time put a letter to the king saying, oh, listen, we want to eliminate our upper house. And the king's secretary answered, not the king, king's secretary answered saying, oh, we don't care what you do. You can do whatever you like. Well, that was wrong. And guess who his secretary was?
Wouldn't have a clue. It was long before my time, man.
Winston Churchill.
No shit.
No shit.
He did.
Wow. So Winston Churchill.
And he ended up running a country straight.
Yeah, that's right. No wonder there was nothing but trouble. So the devil was definitely in the hen house. So yeah, that, and at 1922. So why is it still this way today? Because no one's challenged it properly. There is an absolute raft of law that prevents Queensland from eliminating its upper house. It's just mind-boggling. I'd read this stuff and just go, "Wow, there's a bit more. There's more and more." I've got a toolbox full of stuff to throw the whole Queensland system.
So I guess the simplistic answer to how did Queensland get away with it? The people allowed it to happen.
Yep.
And are still allowing it to happen.
And
so
still going. Yep,
fellow Queenslanders, I think we need to sit down and have a bit of a yarn.
That's it.
We have some wise minds here to assist us. So I think we have a point of call.
Yes.
We'll meet at the next Know Your Rights meeting in Townsville.
Sounds good.
What is your opinion on nationalstrikeaustralia.org? I'm not too.
I think that's a flow on from the Labor Party. The Labor Party in the 1970s, they were really pushing big time towards the unions and the power of the unions. And where did that get us? It got us what's called the Lima Agreement, which is why we've now lost all of our manufacturing in this country. It's just they made the labour charges to manufacture goods here in Australia so expensive that our corporations were forced to go overseas to source cheap labour.
Especially when, you add that whole free trade thing in and we get rid of the tariffs that were protecting, Australian businesses. So, yeah, thanks, guys. Well done again. And they say they're there for the worker. I mean, fuck how that works.
Yeah, I'm still trying to work that one out.
And I'm just looking at the website now, and the belligerent occupation. I'll have to look into it. Is this that Como guy again? Yeah,
Yeah,
Como John. Yeah, look, I seconded by Ricardo Bosi. I think I've heard all I need to know.
that's it.
You
Yeah.
know, I have little to no faith in Ricardo, because he's one of those ones who says, sit back, do fuck all, and trust in the plan, but I'm not going to tell you what the plan is. And this
Yeah.
guy calls himself Como John. It makes my skin a little bit crawly, and yeah, that's just my first glance. Look, I'll give it a go and a bit of a look, and maybe get back to you. But yeah, personally, I'm concerned, very concerned. Let's see now. See if we can field one more quick question, because the back teeth are starting to float. I've got about a 2-hour bladder, I find, especially after a couple of beers. It'll last longer in the truck on water. All right, let's see now. State having there's so many things that I've been missing while we get through these things.
Mate, you need one of those suits that they wear on that movie June.
Yeah, bloody oath. A still suit, I believe it was called.
Yeah.
Memory serves, yeah. I
Right.
recently read the book, much better than the movies. Although I like the
Yeah.
old movies better than this new one. I wasn't impressed with the new one. Their new Paul Atreides, man, he's just not selling it. Like, he's this weedy little white dude, I
I
was like,
know.
hang on, he's supposed to be of royal blood. He
Yeah,
should be,
right.
convincing me he could lead an army. Right now, I don't think he could lead himself to the fucking toilet.
That's right. You just sort of wonder where the people picking the
Yeah, where's
actors to do
casting?
these
Where was the
roles.
casting crew? What the fuck were
That's
they
right.
thinking?
What's going on?
No.
Yeah, it's a brilliant book.
Should we should concentrate on establishing an upper house again? Agreed, Janine. I reckon that was kind of the point where we're going
Yep,
forward. Definitely.
absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
I have no confidence on the current bunch of idiots that are in there, and get them out and just bring in a whole new system there.
yeah. Well, I think we might just leave it there, because I'm not really seeing anything that's sort of worthy of spending any more time at this point. Look, thanks everybody for watching and supporting the channel and whatnot, especially my amazing Patreons who give us a couple of bucks here and there. And I haven't got the list in front of me of all the amazing people, but I've mentioned you guys so many times. You know who you are, and you know how much I appreciate you all. It's wonderful, the support we're getting from the community. Thank you very much, Darrell, for coming on and gracing us with your presence. I know you're a very busy man and whatnot.
Well, thanks for having us, Batty. It's been a pleasure, mate. I'll look
No,
forward to well, we're going to have to go down and have a beer at the local water hole when we're
yep.
down the way.
For sure. And look, man, and if they won't let us in, I've got plenty of homebrew here, mate. You're more than welcome. So, we'll definitely get a few sips into us if we, in some way, shape, or form, my friend. Definitely. Definitely. So, thanks, Patreon. Yep. Thanks, Janine. I'm sure, I know Janine will be keen to meet you guys too. So, yeah.
Cool.
It'd be great. I really hope that the people of Townsville and surrounding regions get on board in these final weeks leading up to the event, because I'd hate to see you guys have to go, well, it's just not financially viable. That would really suck. So really would love the people to get on board and support this, because it's truth. Personally, I'm being extremely selfish and I want to be there, so don't hold me back. Help me out.
You'll be there, mate.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's truth. If I have to, I guess I'll just jump on a plane and come see you in the Gold Coast or something. If that's what's got to happen, that's what's got to happen. But it'd be really nice to have you guys up here in Townsville, I reckon. And I reckon there's a whole bunch of Labor Party people and various other people around town will go and duck and hide while you're around.
Good. So they should too.
Bloody oath, mate. Bloody oath. All right. Well, thanks heaps, man. And until next time, everybody, be the best version of yourselves you can be. Stay informed. Get informed. We've got a whole world to save here.
Absolutely.
No worries. Take it easy, Darrell. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Patty. Cheers, buddy.